Hello, and thanks so much for joining me here for another episode of Storytime. Today's story is called Starting to Surface. It's from my collection, Peripheral Visions and Other Stories. Starting to Surface. She had forgotten how humid the pool area was. Coming from the chill of the locker room, the damp air hit her like a blanket, making it difficult to draw a breath. Carrie felt as if she was suffocating, and for a moment she almost ran back to the relative comfort of the hallway. Don't be ridiculous, she told herself, and walked toward the water. Just because you haven't been here for 6 months, not since it happened, not since, but there she stopped her thoughts. She wasn't here to think. She was here to swim, to exercise muscles, to get rid of the tension that stiffened her neck and made her head ache by nightfall. At least, the scratches and bruises had healed. You were lucky, you know, the doctor in the emergency room had said when he examined her. It could have been much worse. Worse? Carrie knew what he meant, of course. He might have had a gun or a knife. There might have been others with him. She might have died. Yes, it could have been worse. Not that it was over, not by a long shot. If they caught him, not that her description was much help, there would be the trial to endure. Can't you be a little clearer about your attacker, the officer had asked. Tall or short? Thin or fat? Could you glimpse his skin color? Did he have an accent? But she couldn't remember much, except that he smelled like stale beer and cigarettes. After all, he had come from behind, just as she was unlocking her car in the parking deck. Even now, she could remember the frozen second when she thought, it can't be happening to me. Just before he threw some sort of cloth over her head and face, muffling her screams, her breath, her thoughts. Afterwards, her mind ran in circles, focusing on random bits and pieces. Anything, rather than think about what happened. This was a new blouse, she remembered thinking, as her fingers found several tears in the material. I look a mess, she had thought, and gathering up her purse where he had flung it, she pulled out a comb and tried to run it through her tangled hair before she called the police. Even after they arrived, she kept pulling at the knots until the pain penetrated her frozen brain, and she started to cry. She didn't stop, not for a long time. She cried all the way through the examination, through the questioning by police, and all the way home, while Jeff drove the car, his hands clenching the steering wheel until she expected it to break in two. Carrie, are you okay? Are you hurt? He had asked when he first came to the hospital. He had stood by the bedside, almost as if he was afraid to come any closer, to touch her, to hug her, and in a way, she was glad she didn't want to be held. Not then. Not yet. It wasn't until later that the questions came. Was he bigger than you? How much bigger? Did he have a weapon? Didn't you look around before you got in the car? All those questions he asked her, and the unspoken one was the loudest. Why didn't you fight him? Because, of course, she hadn't. She'd been too frightened to respond. All Carrie wanted was for it to be over, for him to go away. She was almost willing to pretend it never happened. If the other couple hadn't come along when they did and found her pulling hysterically at her hair while her skirt lay on the cement floor, she might have considered doing just that. Anything, rather than face what had happened. Because, after all, rape is what happens to other people. To young girls who are careless. To women who frequent bars on the bad side of town. Rape doesn't happen to 32-year-old professional women who are at their place of business, who are where they should be, when they should be, who dress conservatively and never speak to strangers. That's what she used to think, anyway. So as I said, that's an excerpt from my short story, Starting to Surface. And as you can tell, it's a more serious story about somebody to whom a bad thing happens. Somebody who didn't do anything to deserve it. Somebody who was taking the normal precautions, and yet a bad thing happened. And the questions that she's asked by the police, by her lover, by even her parents, they're normal questions. They're questions we probably would ask if a loved one came to us and said something like this had happened to them. They're normal questions, and at the same time, they're difficult questions for her to hear, but the question that is making it hardest for her to recover from what had happened is the question she keeps asking herself. Did I do something wrong to deserve this? The other question, is this my fault? Another question, am I being punished for something? You know, these are all the questions that are coming into Carrie's mind that are holding her back, holding her down, weighting her down until she can't heal. That is part of the reason, whether she realizes it or not, why she came to the pool, a place where she used to love to come. She loved to swim. And it's been 6 months and she's not healed yet in the true sense of the word. And so she came to the pool. Maybe she hoped that being there would start the healing process. You'll have to read the story to find out. Was Carrie able to find some way to release the weights of the unnecessary guilt that she's put on herself? Is there a way she can break free of the chains of all those questions, the questions she asks herself every day? Will Carrie be able to finally surface and breathe air, fresh air, clean air, free air, and start her life over again? So I hope you will take the opportunity to read Starting to Surface and the other stories in Peripheral Visions and Other Stories. And if you are intrigued by them, if you enjoy them, if they make you think, I would love to hear what you think about it. What was your response? In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you back here again when I'll share another story with you from one of my short story collections. Thanks for being part of my day.